Good morning, everyone. We'll be starting shortly. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Good morning to you all. My name is Baljan Norazbaeva, and today we will be talking about setting up for external engagement success. So today we will be diving deep into the foundations of university business collaboration, and I will be presenting you with a framework that we have developed at UIN, and the one that we use for generally driving not just conversations, but the development of the field more generally. My name is Baljan Dorazbaeva. I'm the Managed Strategic Initiatives at UIN. And maybe just before we start, a few words about our organization for the ones who are not familiar with us. We are a global knowledge organization, and we are your partner for all your external engagement needs. So what we do at UIN is that we conduct research on university business collaboration, external engagement, and entrepreneurial universities, which we then translate into insights for our global community. We are a global organization with close to 130-40 organizations all across the globe. As part of our membership, and we run a number of different events for our community on a monthly basis, so many of which you can find on our website and are free of charge. But we would also love to see you as part of our bigger events, about which I will speak in just a second. But we also provide training. So if you would ever be interested in taking more comprehensive training, a little bit more, I would say, longer and more thought through than what we are doing as a taster as part of the EU.FFICIENT training, do reach out to us. We will be happy to help out. And we provide a consultancy for both universities and companies willing to improve on their strategic partnerships capacity or willing to build entrepreneurial structures within their institutions. Just one last thing about us. So we will be meeting with our global community this year in Stockholm, talking about all things around external engagement, entrepreneurial universities, and we're going to Stockholm this year. So feel free to join us. It would be great. We were bringing close to 500 people, all enthusiastic about how we can drive ideas to scaled impact in the intersection between academia and business. All right, well, that takes me back to our workshop. And today I will be talking you through some of the, I would say, core findings and core concepts that we have developed over the past 15, 20 years. The basis for today's conversation stems from the work that we have done for the European Commission, the State of University Business Collaboration in Europe. That is one of the most I would say, first and biggest studies that we have done for the European Commission on the topic of university business collaboration. And what we have done is that we mapped out the state of engagement across different national contexts. And it led us to gathering insights from close to 17.5 respondents coming from both universities and business. So today you will see that I will be talking you through some of the key findings that we have gathered through this research, but I will also be sharing some of the case studies with you as well. So examples of successful university business collaboration, but also how can you drive it more generally. So what we would like to start with is that university business collaboration, as much as we talk about collaboration and engagement between organizations is first and foremost, it's a people's game. And therefore, it's also quite a dynamic and quite a complex phenomena, because basically it involves so many different stakeholders in between organizations, but also within the organizations themselves. Therefore, university business engagement does not always naturally work due to all those different constraints, especially because we are often talking about misalignment between perhaps different expectations when it comes to university business collaboration, perhaps different risk profile, especially if we're talking about the way universities operate versus operation within the companies, time orientation. We also see a lot of differences in mindset, goals, and attitude toward rules. Therefore, the question that we are posing is, how can we develop and sustain mutually beneficial collaboration? So this is where we are bringing back our framework. So we will be talking a lot about today university business collaboration ecosystem. That is the framework that we have developed via that study that I just talked about before. And the idea behind this framework is that it basically provides a bit of a structure and a bit of a, I would say, grounded understanding in how we can better manage and understand elements affecting university business collaboration. So why is this framework needed, or why have we decided to develop it in the first place? Is that would be, of course, curious to hear about your experiences, but our experience shows that as much as we talk about university business collaboration, innovation ecosystems, this whole topic is still quite complex and abstract. Again, because it involves so many different moving elements and so many different stakeholders, each bringing their own different expectations as well as motivations, each coming with different constraints as well. And what we also find is that the topic generally lacks common definitions and concepts. There are lots of differences on contextual level. It also very much depends on what type of institution you are coming from, or what types of institutions you are working with. And increasingly, we also hear that there is a need for more evidence and impact capturing in this field as well. So that's why the idea behind this was to create a framework that can help us simplify the reality a little bit and provide a bit of a structure on how we can look at those concrete elements and the relationships between them to simply structure the way we think about it and analyze our own environment, to ultimately support strategic decision making, so that in the end we're able to undertake evidence-based management and policy when it comes to partnerships, governance, as well as university business collaboration as a whole. So this is how the framework looks like. You will have an access to some materials if you would like to dive a little bit deeper. But as I said, today I will be talking you through some of the key elements of the framework. Especially today, we will be talking about activities as well as supporting mechanisms that help sustain university business collaboration. But we will also be touching upon UBC circumstances. So just to start with, I would like to talk us through some of the key ways in which universities and businesses can cooperate. Well, what we will be presenting you with right now is a very general, sort of commonly identified way on how we can structure those channels and activities. But of course, you may notice or you may recognize that there might be a much more granular diversification of different kinds of activities. But let's just look at the more sort of baseline level of how those activities can be looked at more so. And for that, we will be using a matrix where we will be looking at the knowledge as well as the practical application of it. And on a bottom line, what I would like to start with would be activities in education. And one of the most common activities would be mobility of students. So when we ask universities and companies in which activities they would usually interact with each other, one of the first things that will pop up would be mobility of students, which entails usually temporary movement of students from the university to the company. A different way to call it would be internships, apprenticeships. This is something that is often formalized as part of the curricula, or students often pursue it on their own, still relying quite heavily often on the connections that perhaps their professors may have with some companies outside of the academia. Another very, very common activity is curriculum development and delivery. It may entail very formalized activities in which we invite company representatives to come in and basically help us co-create the curricula so that the graduates are more prepared for the world outside of the university and become hence more employable. Or it may also involve more informal activities, such as, for example, inviting a company representative to come in and maybe give a guest lecture. Or you all may have heard about project-based learning, challenge-based learning, basically engaging external stakeholders in supplying sort of and providing some of the challenges, real-world challenges that the students can be focusing on. So this is how it works. Another activity that I wanted to talk about is the dual study programs. This is a much more formalized activity in this regard. So this is where we're talking about very structured programs in which universities and companies work together and provide students with basically type of education that would involve both studying at the university, say, for a certain number of months per semester, plus also then going and having an employment within the company and having sort of a training as they go through their study program. Lifelong learning is when we refer to programs in which universities actually act as service providers to the external environment. So this is when you may notice some of the examples in which academics, professors provide professional development programs or one-off workshops, different kinds of events, or again, speaking more of more formalized or institutionalized activities. The examples may include different kinds of MBAs and executive programs for industry. Now moving on up to the new development of knowledge. First, we would like to touch upon valorization activities, as we refer to them, or commercialization activities. And those would traditionally include activities such as patenting and licensing of research, but also everything that relates to entrepreneurship at universities, both coming from students founding their own companies or participating in entrepreneurial activities, but also academic entrepreneurship, hence spin-off and spin-out creation, and social entrepreneurship as a way to differentiate those enterprises that will have a social mission. Now moving higher up, I would like to talk about a group of activities that is actually often being overlooked, but when we talk about university business collaboration, because we tend to think about collaboration in education and research and perhaps commercialization, but often universities and businesses engage with each other in, for example, co-creating shared facilities or providing those facilities to each other. The examples may include companies basically having office spaces on the university campus, especially if it is a science park or a structure similar to it, or the other way around, where some universities may be able to get access to some of the lab space provided by innovation-intensive companies. Another type of more direct support include industry support and endowments. This is where universities are receiving in-kind of financial support from external stakeholders, universities and other organizations alike. And shared governance is when, and it works both ways, when, for example, a company representative is invited to sit on a university board when advising on either research agenda, or again, looking at some of the educational programs together, and the other way around, where a university person, a professor, for example, is being invited to join a company board, again, helping to decide on some of the more research-focused or innovation in focused things. And last but not least, collaboration in education. And here we would like to emphasize, I would say, three main channels, three main activities. The first thing that comes to mind usually is collaborative R&D, joint R&D. This is when university and company teams up to undertake a joint research and development initiative together. It's either funded by the government or universities and companies team up and do a joint investment together in different shapes and forms, whether via personnel or actually providing some funding for it. Another activity that I would like to emphasize is the mobility of personnel. We call it academic mobility. This is where we observe academics taking a sabbatical, for example, and moving temporarily to work or have a bit of a time to do some work within the company. That works the other way around as well. We see how some industry people are being invited to join university for industry professorship, for example, or just a guest professorship positions. And last but not least, consulting to business. So advisory services that universities and academics are often providing to companies. This is a straightforward way to engage. This is where you sort of receive an assignment from a company, and universities are able to conduct research on that topic. And usually there is a financial remuneration coming from it. So this is just to summarize, again, most commonly identified ways to engage. However, if we start digging a little bit deeper, or if we would like to unpack this in a more granular way, some other activities may pop up and come to mind, such as, for example, hackathons or ways in which mobility of students can be presented in a more granular way when we start differentiating between work-based learning, internships, apprenticeships, industrial PhDs, different ways of how private-public partnerships can be organized, and so on and so forth. But this, I think, provides you with a good picture of how it may look like in reality. Now, moving on, I would like to just, as I promised, to present you with a case study. So one of the case studies that we usually like to use when we talk about different activities is the strategic partnership between SAP and Linköping University in Sweden. Now, this is the collaboration that's been existing for many, many years. And Linköping, being a regional university, has a very strong ties to their local partner, SAP. And essentially what is happening is that through this very strategic partnership that they have, they really put a lot of effort into building out a regional innovation ecosystem around the area. And as part of their strategic partnership, they do engage in this academic mobility that we were talking about before. So SAP managers also work as adjunct professors for 20% of their time, and they not only teach courses or supervise thesis, they also do sit on university boards. So this is where we talk about the governance element again, and they mentor researchers and students. We did mention briefly industrial PhDs as a form of academic mobility or student mobility. So this is when PhD students in their formalized way spend 50% of their time in SAP's workplace and half of the time they stay within the university. So there are many benefits of that type of collaboration, but first and foremost, I think that the main beneficiaries of that are, of course, students themselves, because they become more employable. SAP becomes a much more engaging place to work and improves also their staff recruitment and retainment. So the idea behind this is also to have a very strong talent pipeline. And I think that's the reason why many large innovation-intensive companies would engage with universities in the first place. So it also just generally helps to retain talent and reducing regional decline. But another important point is, of course, the building the innovation capacity. So talent, innovation capacity, I think those are the two main things why, for example, some of the, again, commonly identify ways on how we can support university business collaboration. And we will be looking at elements such as policies, strategies, structures and approaches and activities. And let me just quickly first start with policies. So this is when we refer to some of the policies and innovation agenda that you may have either on a national or international context, or maybe also regional. But here we refer to some of the regional innovation policies that you may have in place, IP rights legislation for academic research, discovery, any kinds of policies and strategies that positively support research collaboration between university and business. I guess Horizon Europe is a great example for that, but also existence of any kind of public seat capital or funding supporting university business collaboration initiative. Now, if we will look into more organizational levels, so universities, for example, may have some dedicated strategies in place that are also supporting university business collaboration. For example, they may have some seed funding for smaller collaboration initiatives, or they have a dedicated support for commercialization or valorization, or they can support their educators in how they can better collaborate with external partners for educational purposes. So it may also entail provision of specific incentives and recognitions for academics to engage in university business collaboration. For some, it may include reduction of teaching time for undertaking collaboration and business, and existence of personnel within the universities that are basically dedicated to supporting university business collaboration and basically helping researchers and academics to form those connections in a more efficient way. Some structures that may be in place. So we did talk initially about having some sort of a board member advisory board for university business collaboration. Many universities these days have a dedicated role to enterprise and innovation, or in the States, they will call it economic development. Here in the Netherlands, they will often call it impact and valorization, but basically everything that it comes to making your research and education a little bit more relevant in society and supporting researchers with specific strategies and activities to make that possible. So yeah, all kinds of IP, knowledge transfer, alumni agencies, liaison offices that you may have in place, EU funding offices as well. Some of the more, I would say, infrastructure like resources in place as well, science and technology parks, co-working spaces, and we did mention already a job position for businesses. And when we talk about activities, we also refer to all kinds of programming that you may have in place when it comes to supporting, again, collaborative engagement activities. There may be dedicated networks to university business collaboration, business clubs. Some universities initiate those to basically bring together companies that they work with closely. Entrepreneurship and commercialization courses offered to academics, university business collaboration activities that will facilitate student interaction, career fairs, or industry days that would be organized by universities as well as just general information outreach that may be happening towards academics when it comes to university business collaboration. So just to give you an example of how one of German universities does it to support university business collaboration for their academics. The example is coming from Münster University of Applied Sciences in North Rhine-Westphalia. So Münster University of Applied Sciences recognizes and supports its academic partnership activities in many different ways. Now, it's important to mention it is a university of applied sciences. So for them, it's sort of like in their DNA as well to support those kinds of interactions. But what essentially has been happening in their particular case is that for a very long while, they were able to provide 10% top up on any sort of industry income that may be coming from collaborative activities, for example, whether it is we're talking about consulting, R&D, or perhaps challenge-based learning for which some of the companies may also be providing either in-kind or financial contribution. So, and that money then could be used also for budget for an office assistant, just to also release some of the bureaucratic, I would say, effort from researchers and academics and professors themselves. Often it would happen that the professor who is leading the research group would also receive the reduction in teaching hours, so that then they can also focus more on their collaborative activities. In that particular case, we also have seen some instances where an additional office space will be provided for collaborating academics, so that they can held meetings with their industry partners and also perhaps organize some joint workshops together with them. So in the end of the day, they made it part of the performance assessment for promotion. So we talked about the importance of actually providing academics with those motivations and also providing them with support for that. And this is how this university, for example, attempted to make this possible for their academics. And just to summarize this, we're at the very end of our session today. Just to talk through a few next steps towards university business collaboration. So we talked a lot about today the motivations, the barriers, different types of collaborations. But I think in the end of the day, what's quite important is, again, to focus on, at the initial stages at least, on building out those relationships. So starting from a common ground and topics that are of mutual interest. And generally, we also often say that it's just easier to start small. So instead of going into a large investment for research and development, perhaps a nice way to build out that relationship would be actually from starting with educational focused activities, maybe a little challenge-based learning initiative, or perhaps a co-supervising a thesis together if you are an academics striving to build out a bit more strategic collaboration with your partner. It's important to identify the potential barriers and try to reduce or eliminate them, whilst at the same time also taking time to understand the other party's motivation, so that we can be clear on what each party actually wants to achieve, to then jointly agree upon objectives and success measures, and invest time and energy into building out those relationships and supporting those relationships. So this is how we hope the collaboration can be supported. And I see there is a question before we close off. That's great. Let me just quickly take this one. Thank you, Tamar. I have a question. How do you enable the collaboration and practice? How we can connect academia with business, have lack of resources, and ensure parties is beneficial? Do you have any good practice? How those connections were made at the initial stage? Well, one example I have actually showed to you, and that was this AIM Day. So that's when a university actually takes the charge in helping their academics to provide them with introductions to companies. So I think bringing everyone together for an event is a great way. What we often tell researchers is actually instead of trying to do something on their own, they should also just rely on some of the external structures, externally outward-facing structures within their university. So we did talk about supporting mechanisms such as liaison offices, partnership offices, and so on and so forth. So that's their job, to support academics in that. So, and I'm not sure which organization you're from, but in any university these days, there will be a dedicated structure whose job is to support collaboration for academics. Another way to do it in a more practical way, as a former academic myself, I can tell that indeed it's easier to start small. So just starting with a small collaboration and initiative instead of going in a full-blown collaboration immediately, that's what helps a lot with starting out and building out that relationship. And I think in the end of the day, what we often say, especially to academics who are just starting out with that journey, just reaching out to companies and trying to have a conversation, and again, agreeing on a small joint initiative is what often helps. But it's just quite important to rely on some of the support that you already have, because the problem is often is that academics may not even know of some of those structures that they may have in place. So there are some roadmaps in place. There are some or support structures in place that may help with that initial step. Great. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for taking time to join me this morning.